Welcome. For those of you who have graduated, welcome back. And those of you who are somewhere in between, we're glad to have you here. Especially on this topic, which is so pivotal to us because we have a planning program here. And for the students want to know, where's the role of planning in Houston's future? So we're so looking forward to hearing what our panelists have to say. So with that, I'm just going to hand this over to Chelsea, who will get us started, and hopefully we have something enlightening and something exciting once it's over.
All right, thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you to TSU for this awesome space. We're very excited to use it. This is a great forum that we have here tonight. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Chelsea Young. I'm the director-elect for the Houston chapter of APA, the American Planning Association. Our current director is having his second child right now, or his wife is really. So he sends his regrets, but we're really happy for him and we want to wish him well. So you'll get stuck with me for a little bit tonight. Sorry about that. But we are very excited to get this going. So tonight's event is the first of hopefully many future opportunities where we can bring together talented Houston professionals and professional organizations to discuss a topic that really has greatly and it does help shape the future of our city. The topic is planning. Our talented multidisciplinary panel of experts sitting at the Planning Roundtable will discuss the value of planning in shaping Houston's future. So just to give a little introduction about APA, just for those of you who are part of another organization and may not know, the American Planning Association provides leadership in the development of vital communities by advocating excellence in planning, promoting education and citizen empowerment, and providing our members with the tools and support necessary to meet the challenges of growth and change. Our mission is making great communities for all. Our vision, we will lead the way to equitable, thriving communities by creating unique insights as well as innovative and practical approaches to enable the planning community to anticipate and successfully adapt to the needs of a rapidly changing world. Okay, so tonight at this roundtable event, we will go into a few awesome topics that we're excited to hear from all these people. We will spotlight how prior grassroots efforts, planning, and policy reforms have led to shaping the built environment in Houston. We will also talk about the value of having a collaborative and multidisciplinary approach to infrastructure and how it's led to improvements in quality of life, economic competitiveness, and regional growth. Lastly, we will discuss and explore ways to continue fostering collaborative approaches to important issues that shape the growth of the city and region. I'd like to recognize all of the partner organizations that we brought here today. Every one of these organizations had a part in supporting this and getting these people together. So thank you guys very much. We have ASCE, we have AIA, we have WTS Houston, we have Blueprint Houston, we have Tex ITE, and then we have the YPT, which is Young Professionals in Transportation Houston. Again, a special thanks to Dr. Smith and TSU, as well as the APA board and volunteers. Those of you who are on the APA board, can you raise your hand? I'd like to recognize you guys for all your hard work. Good job. I'd also like to thank our annual sponsors. This keeps our organization alive, so thank you to all of these awesome firms and entities that help us move along. And now for the good stuff. I'd like to introduce to you all of our panelists today. I'm going to give a little bit of a bio of each of them. So here we go. First off, we have Luis Guajardo. He is the Director of Planning and Community Development for Harris County Precinct 4. He leads capital planning and community development efforts across a spectrum of rural, suburban, and urban communities. As a certified planner, he is dedicated to fostering equitable and sustainable communities through planning, design, and policy. He brings a track record of delivering award-winning plans based on inclusive public engagement in the area of housing, transportation, land use, resilience, and urban design or placemaking. He is the immediate past president of the APA Houston section and graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. Next, we have Justin Schultz. He He's the Chief Program Officer. He oversees the dirty work, literally, at the Houston Parks Board, leading the planning, capital projects, maintenance, and conservation programs of the organization. With over 15 years in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, he uses his experience to build partnerships among diverse stakeholders. As the Houston Parks Board strategy lead, he is responsible for identifying opportunities for future work and collaborates closely with public sector stakeholders. He is focused on implementing the Parks Board's recently completed strategic plan, which aims to invest $400 million in future work, expanding greenways and improving parks across our region. He is a native Houstonian and a graduate of New York University and the University of Texas. Sherry Wiesner is next. She is the president of the Memorial Heights Redevelopment Authority, or TERS 5, which is undertaking several mobility and safety improvement projects, including Shepherd Durham and 19th Street. She is also the president of SMW, a business strategy, process improvement, and management systems consultancy. She enjoys research, public policy, planning, and working with public agencies, special districts, commissions, and elected or appointed officials. Prior to SMW, she was Director of Projects for Scenic Houston and served as Chief of Staff for City of Houston at-large council member, where she developed policy recommendations to achieve overall objectives. She is a graduate of Texas A&M University and the University of Houston. I knew there would be one. Lynn Henson is up next. Ms. Lynn Henson was previously the division manager within the City of Houston's Planning and Development Department. Lynn has worked in the planning department for more than 27 years on a wide array of projects, including neighborhood-level plans, Plan Houston, the city's first general plan, and the ordinances that protect neighborhood character. Lynn's new role will be working with the Houston Housing Authority as the Choice Neighborhoods Director. At HHA, she will direct the creation and implementation of HUD Choice neighborhood plans within the city. Next is Lindsay Williams. She is the Director of Community Development for the Houston Land Bank, where she leads efforts to drive equitable development and community-focused initiatives. With over a decade of experience, Lindsay has been instrumental in launching programs like the Community Purpose Lot Program and the Brownfields Activation Committee. She has also spearheaded partnerships for the Finding Home initiative to expand affordable homeownership in Houston's underserved communities. Lindsay's work has been recognized with AIA Houston presidential citations and other awards, reflecting her passion for equity in the built environment. She currently serves as the Associate Director for the Texas Society of Architects and is a frequent speaker on urban planning and equity in development. Lindsay is a proud Prairie View A&M University alumni, wife, and mother. Last but not least, we have Mr. Michael Bloom. He is the Sustainability Practice Manager at 5 Engineering. Since the 1990s, he has helped investigate and restore environmentally impacted sites and manage industrial and municipal wastewater. Since about 2010, he has planned and designed more equitable, resilient, and sustainable public infrastructure projects that deliver enhanced economic, social, and environmental triple bottom line project outcomes. He is a registered professional engineer as well as a certified planner and Envision sustainability professional. He holds leadership positions with the Houston branch, the Texas section, and national committees of the American Society of Civil Engineers. He is originally from Philadelphia and has lived in Houston since 1998. With that, I will turn it over to Michael Bloom, who will lead our panelist discussion.
Great. To the president panel, I'm awed at the expertise here. So, well, we got a lot to cover, so we're going to go pretty quickly through the panel discussion, and then there'll be some time for audience Q&A at the end. Planning encompasses a lot of different outcomes, a lot of different things. So the first set of questions here for you would be to just talk a little bit about what planning really looks like for your organization. Particularly interested in what the outcomes are supposed to be that you're hoping for, the time horizon, the funding sources, and the partners. Let's start with Lynn.
Thank you, Michael. I do want to say that in my answers, I'm kind of going to answer for the City of Houston, and I'll kind of answer for the Houston Housing Authority. But I have to start with the proverbial, Houston doesn't have zoning, and we don't have a comprehensive plan. One of my favorite questions that I get when the phone rings is, what are you doing? Where are you planning? Where is it going to be? Tell me what zoning is in this area. And when I say there is no zoning, No. I mean, what zoning do you have in that area? We don't have zoning, but we do have a number of plans and we have a number of regulations that the city operates under. And for example, Plan Houston in 2015, several organizations pulled together and worked with the city of Houston to create that overarching high-level framework. And the goal of that was to then take that framework and move on to other plans in the area. So we do have plans, however, like the capital improvement projects plan, which is a 5-year budget. I mentioned that a little later probably. And although that is for major capital projects within the city, that affects infrastructure, that can affect large dollar items like fire stations and fire trucks. We have a major thoroughfare and freeway plan, and we have parks plans, and we have, for example, with the terms of management districts, which greatly affect how neighborhoods are developed. And with my new role at HHA, the community choice in CUNY Homes grant, just right across the street, when you walk out, take a look across the street, has received a $50 million grant to improve that neighborhood and the greater Third Ward. And I don't think that would have happened without having gone through a planning process, through a planning grant for that work here in Third Ward.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn. So now, Justin, with the Houston Parks Board, what does planning look like for your organization?
First, thanks for coming. You know, it's a Thursday, the weather's not horrible. You could have very easily just hung out at home, or maybe been to a park or a greenway, but you're here. Planning for us, so Houston Parks Board is a not-for-profit, and we are focused on expanding, improving, and protecting parks and green space throughout the Houston region. So for us, planning, I am a planner, but for my whole career, which has sort of been planning adjacent, I never really felt like I was a planner. I was always like, oh, I worked in infrastructure, or, oh, you know, I helped governments do X, Y, or Z thing. I never really felt like I was a planner per se. But in my role now, I actually kind of feel like I do real planning. We get in front of our GIS, web map, and we look for where we could build a trail, and we look at, what the SVI of that neighborhood is, and we look at where other plans are and how we can connect into that. So the beginning stages of planning for us really are just sort of exploring, and that's really fun. And I hope whatever you do, whether you're a planner or you're training to be a planner or you are a recovering planner, I hope that you get to spend at least some of your time doing that fun, creative work. But eventually you have to stop just playing around on a map, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do next. And so we really look at all of the data that we have, all the different data sets that either we've developed or come from other sources, and we say, okay, how can we get all of these ideas down to something that's a realistic path forward, pun intended. And what we usually do is look at our strategic plan. Because if you don't have a set of principles and sort of standards that you're going to use, you're going to end up doing a whole bunch of lots of different things, and you're going to lack focus. So we look at our strategic plan, which tells us what kind of work we should do, where we should be doing it, at what scales, and then from there we start to talk to partners. We are not-for-profit. Every project that we work on is a public-private partnership. And we're often, working with the city. Harris County, Precinct 4 is a huge partner and supporter of the work that we do. We'll work with Harris County Toll Road Authority, the Flood Control District, Centerpoint. We even work with Union Pacific, believe me. We work with neighborhoods. So we're always trying to figure out where is that synergy, where is that sweet spot of people that want to support the project, either from a grassroots level, people that want to support the project from a funding perspective, we really like that. And then of course, because there are so many entities in Houston, because there are so many different jurisdictions, someone else, like TERS 5, may have already done some planning and has this great project, and they're just looking for help on implementation. So it's figuring out where you fit in to a different project, and each project is its own special little thing, it's always very bespoke, but all of that comes together, and from there, that's where projects get built. And I will say one nice thing about working at the Houston Parks Board that I don't think Lynn or our other panelists who work in government necessarily have this much flexibility. Our time horizon is as long as we want to make it. We work across jurisdictions, we work across elections, and so we can really have a 10, 15-year plan and have the time to implement it. And we'll talk about this more, like working through the changes in administration because we are tied to an election like a lot of the other panelists up here are.
Thank you so much. And then just a quick acronym, SVI, Social Vulnerability Index.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Luis at Precinct 4.
Yeah, so can you all hear me very well? Also, thanks for being here this evening. We're starting to get better weather, so really appreciate it. Could have been anywhere else. All right, perfect. So a lot of what we do at Harris County Precinct 4 in many ways is kind of new to some extent. We're introducing planning at the precinct level, I think, in ways and at a scale that hasn't been quite done before. I think there's some good examples of two other precincts, particularly in the county, that have been doing some level of planning. But a lot of what we do, we focus on project development in our CIP. That's a pretty big component for our work. We have about 125 projects in our portfolio, and the planner's role prior to our existence here is now to, what we do is we try to make sure that we can get these projects ready so they can be competitive for grant funding, so that they can be designed according to the community's input and the community's values. And so we've introduced and infused a lot of that into some of these projects. But because we have a team of about 8 planning professionals, we're able to kind of do this at scale and manage a series of these projects. Right now we're managing, just on the planning side, about 30 of these projects are being advanced simultaneously. So that's a pretty big chunk of the 125 that we have. We also do community planning, or what we call our bottom-up community development work, because we recognize that infrastructure investments haven't been equitable, right? And so the community development part is working with communities that have been underinvested to create that pipeline of projects that can kind of change the kind of pipeline that we get. So we're not just getting projects in wealthier, higher income neighborhoods, but that we're also creating a stream of these equitable development projects in areas that have been ignored. And then we have GIS services too within the planning office here, and that really supports a lot of the different departments within Precinct 4. We make sure that if our parks office, our operations teams, or our comms teams, that they have the best kind of mapping support, so that we're visually communicating with communities, whether it's a planning issue, an engineering issue, or something else, right, related to what the precinct is doing. So that's kind of really the way we approach planning, but a lot of it is really new to the precinct, and we're in many ways kind of building and flying the plane at the same time, and have really enjoyed doing that. We've got some great staff at our office, and have been working across different departments to deliver infrastructure in ways that are more thoughtful and creative than have been in the past. So it's a little bit about what we do. Alongside that, we also support many of our different departments and the commissioner through policy making, specifically policy around housing, land use, growth and development, and transportation and flood control issues. So we'll step in every once in a while when there are hot items on commissioner's court and provide some of that guidance as well.
Great, thank you so much, Luis. Okay, Lindsay Williams with the Houston Bender. What does planning look like for the Euros?
I think first, who knows what the Houston Land Bank is and does? I'm so excited. That's awesome. Okay, so as you all know, we acquired the land that was formerly part of the LAR program, that $1 lot program that was facilitating the building of affordable housing. I do want to shout out Lynn Henson, who is a key team member for the LAR program when it was with the city of Houston. We like to call her Laura's mom, and we're just celebrating something. So the Houston Land Bank, we are a local government corporation, and we really act as the bridge between government, community needs, and private resources in order to build affordable housing as well as develop community and make them sustainable and invest in community assets. So planning for us is both short and long term. In our short term goals, we do have the activation of our scattered lots and parcels, the activation of some of our community asset land, our large tract land, as well as the cleanup and remediation of brownfields and the testing of those. Our long-term goal is, of course, to expand the access and the quantity of affordable housing in the city of Houston, because as we all know, we're in crisis. So in terms of funding, although we've secured several grants and we have multiple funding sources in order to sustain as an organization, the city of Houston funds our operations for our affordable housing program. We've also had acquisition agreements with them as well. The EPA funds our brownfields programs and helps with our brownfield cleanup. Funding is a huge issue, just being transparent about what funding is available and what priorities are set. But we do lean heavily on partnering with other organizations, whether that be private, public, or government, and participate in their planning activities as well. So we're not essentially a planning organization. We like to think of ourselves as implementer. We do have a couple recovering planners on our staff. So we are on the implementation edge, and we know the importance of planning for us because we lean on those plans, those community activities, and heavily participate and lead our own to ensure that whatever we're doing is aligned with the community needs and wants. We firmly believe that inequity in the built environment is by design, and it was planned as well. So with the power of planning and design, we can undo those mistakes and really start making Houston an accessible place for everyone who lives here.
Thanks so much. And then last but not least, Sherry with Memorial Heights.
So, I work for a TERS, and does everybody know what a TERS is? Okay, so we are an agency of the city. There are some TERSs that have participation by both the city and the county. However, one of the TERS I work for is just a city TERS. It's allowed by Chapter 311 of the Local Government Code, which means the state allows TERSs to exist. We work with the city to build infrastructure of all types. Yes, roads, stormwater, parks, all those things can fall within something a TERS would do. But the real purpose of a TERS is economic development. Now, there's a misconception out there that TERSs are about blight and TERSs are about neighborhoods that have been underinvested. That is true to a certain extent. However, the code defines what a TERS, where you can put a TERS, and the TERS appropriateness is with a bunch of different things. And you basically only have to fit one of them in order for it to be appropriate. And one of those is substandard infrastructure, which means basically 100% of the city of Houston. So they can exist everywhere. And of course, the fact that we have substandard infrastructure everywhere probably tells you there's been a lack of planning, or at least a lack of follow-through in the past. We are responsible for a actual physical area that we can build infrastructure in, and we really can build things inside that zone and a little bit outside, because anything we build has to benefit the zone. So we use the increment that we receive to build infrastructure. Because we are creatures of the city, we build everything with the city and with the permission and approval of the city. TERSs do not do anything without the city. So, and that's another misnomer that's out there, is that they're out there doing things without permission or without oversight, but everything has a lot of oversight. The thing that I think is important in our planning is to figure out exactly what the best projects are, and that has a number of factors in it, including what the needs are. And we have a process where we ask every year everyone in our zone, do we not have something on our potential project list? Our potential project list is huge. We will never get to all those projects, but we do try to make sure that we're dealing with the entire list of things that need to be done. And then we also look at what the city wants, and that's actually what makes the final decisions. and we look at where grant money might be available. Our time horizon is probably, well, the CIP is 5 years, but I would tell you 10 years is what we're really looking at to get a big project implemented.
Thanks, Sherry. So we're going to stay with you, Sherry, on the order of this question. So now we're going to shift to governance. Everyone that's doing planning, right, is subject to some sort of elected official or body or group that, you know, has decision-making authority empowered by the voters. So Sherry, can you describe how the Memorial Heights Redevelopment Authority is governed and how that affects your planning efforts?
So, TERSs are creatures of the city. If the county participates, then they are entitled to appoint one or more board members. But the way the board works is the mayor appoints and council approves. They have 2-year terms, they are staggered, half the board is reappointed every 2 years. So basically, everyone on a board has been appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. Every year, the board puts forward a budget and a 5-year CIP, just like the city does. That has to go to the city for approval. So our budgets are approved, our CIPs are approved. So every project is approved in the CIP, and so that means many projects are approved over and over and over again because of the long time frame it takes to get projects done. We are subject to what they want to do. Things change because different administrations come in and they want to do different things. So this is how we try to work through our plans, is to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, to make sure that we've had good public engagement so that we have support for our projects. And we work with economic development at the city, with our council members, and of course with HPW to get our projects done.
And so just a quick follow-up. So how is your position filled and who do you report to?
I report to the board. Some TERSs have staff. I actually am staff for the TERS. You can't have a federal project and you can't spend federal money unless you have actual staff. Some TERSs are small and are not doing federal projects, and so therefore many times the person who actually organizes the TERS and runs the TERS is a consultant who works for the board.
And then another follow-up on the board positions are appointed and then approved. If there's a change in administration, what do the rules say about changes to board members in the middle of a term, let's say? That
doesn't happen. I assume you could impeach somebody. I have never seen it done, so I don't know, but the terms are short. So in essence, by politeness, most mayors do not appoint, the terms typically run out in December. So obviously a mayor could appoint somebody in December and they would then have a 2-year terms. Because of politeness, in general, they do not appoint anyone in December, which means that half the board members in town have all expired with a new mayor comes in.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, Lindsay, different organization, right, the Houston Land Bank. What's your governance look like?
So we also are governed by a board of directors. We have 13 volunteers that sit on the board of directors. They are selected by the entities that were part of our original WAR agreement. So that is HISD, Harris County, the City of Houston, and the Office of the Mayor. They each get a selected number of seats, and so that governance is who the Houston Land Bank team directly reports to. They're also who sets our strategic plan with advice from whatever entities have placed them in those seats. In regard to the City of Houston and Harris County, as you all know, they are created of elected officials and community members, and oftentimes those strategies and priorities may shift or change. So depending on what priority it is that the City of Houston or that Harris County has set, that also greatly affects our strategic plan. We try to plan out for 5-year increments. However, our board can be replaced upon sitting a new administration, as well as priorities can shift amongst those entities. And so aligning those would greatly help us move forward, but also stay on track of whatever strategy laid out for 5 years at a time.
And then I guess just for, maybe for some of the folks in the room, the board of any of these organizations, right, or the elected official for that matter, right, they really set the policy agenda and the outcomes, planning outcomes that are being sought, right? So if you have consistency, you get a consistent set of planning objectives. If you have disruption and inconsistency, you get a lot of different policy objectives from year to year. All right, let's go to Lynn Henson.
Well, at the city of Houston, Houston has a strong mayor form of government. And because of that, the mayor gets to set the initiatives, the direction. He can appoint or remove any department director. He has a lot of influence because he sets the agenda, he or she, they set the agenda for city council each week. And they get to appoint council members to council committee meetings, set the committee meetings. They have a lot of influence over how the budget process goes. The budget process will go each year, but they have a strong influence on how that's operated. So when a mayor comes into office, they're able to set the tone and the direction by which the rest of the city of Houston will follow. Depending on their initiatives, that's what each staff person eventually will follow. I'll say the Houston Housing Authority, the mayor appoints the board of commissioners at the Houston Housing Authority, and the board hires the president and CEO. And so it's a similar structure there.
And then, so Ed, I'm sorry, like you're about to say something else?
Yeah, I want to make another point.
I haven't walked across the podium yet, so you know you still have time.
A few more seconds. So last year, in the general election, the citizens of Houston voted for the opportunity for 83 councilmen. Ending one very early after the new administration took office, and I'm not sure what the outcome of that item was, but there was lots of discussion over several city councilmen meetings, and there was one recently on the agenda, which I haven't read to see what the outcome of yesterday's city council meeting was, but
The
we'll
sidewalk?
see if anybody knows.
Yeah, I think they kind of hunted, they're gonna redo the sidewalk ordinance completely.
So
that right?
this is new and huge for the city of Houston.
And so I just, when you were talking about the mayor's power, it made me think of like lines from some of the TV shows and movies about the executive branch of the federal government. You've maybe heard the expression, I serve at the pleasure of the president, right? So literally, imagine the executive branch with no judicial and no legislative counterpart, right? It's not three parts of government, it's one part of government. I think that's accurate. Would everyone sort of agree on the panel about that analogy? The city of Houston's strong mayor form of government is the executive branch on steroids without the legislative branch, right? Okay, and that's
Those are your words, but yes.
my word. But anyway, and the point is that it's for any mayor in office, right? Not, it's for any mayor always. That's the way the Constitution of the city is written, the charter of the city. All right, let's go to Louise, precinct 4.
So Harris County Precinct 4, we, first and foremost, we have kind of two governance functions. We have an executive function that are expressed and given to us by the state of Texas. And so there's certain limits of what we can do within our policy making. There are things that are completely within our control and others that are not, like regulating land use and zoning. We don't quite have those authorities directly within our purview, but we can exercise some of that authority in ETJ if and when we go through the planning commission. So just hint of the things that we're trying to work on there. But that said, I think important to note too is that the legislative functions include overseeing the justice and safety system for Harris County. It includes overseeing the Harris Health system Port Harris County and several of the Gentleman Board as well. So there's a lot that our commissioner gets involved with that is way beyond our infrastructure and planning that we barely touch.
That's great, I love that.
And there are no term limits as well, so
No term limits?
there are no term limits, so commissioners can be reelected for a long time. And there's essentially also the ability to think proactively about what they want to do long-term if they get reelected by the residents of Harris County. So there's a focus and ability to look longer-term.
So I love the idea that the members of the court, at least the precinct members, have legislative and a executive, almost a dual role. I've never heard that expressed that way. That's really cool. Can you compare and contrast your planning activities in the executive side of the portfolio, like things going on in precinct 4 only versus the other one, the board of legislature?
So one instance of this is, thinking about transportation planning within the executive function. We manage over 1,600 miles of right-of-way in precinct 4. And so we can do all kinds of project development, corridor studies, design, implementation of these projects. So that's our right of way, it's on county road log. The legislative function might be that we're looking at the major thoroughfare plan, right? And so the county has some discretion to also work within within the transportation network beyond the precinct. And so we are looking at things like doing freight study that Hector's leading. County engineering is leading a county transportation plan as well. So those are functions that are.
So is it true to say that if you're making a policy, setting a policy at the legislative branch, you need 3 votes?
Yes, the majority of court.
5 people on court. All right, let's talk about mobility. We're going to shift, actually we're going to stay with Louise, because that's the order that I've got written down on my notes. And so let's talk about mobility. So you guys are undertaking, obviously, a lot of mobility planning, both legislative and executive, which is cool, again, to think about. What are your stakeholders and your organization kind of want mobility to look like in the future? What's your planning objective?
Yeah, so there's a few in this area, and I think a lot of what we hear about is issues of connectivity and safety. There's a lot of communities out in the unincorporated areas that have kind of grown piecemeal, and now they're either connected or they're not connected very well through the transportation network. And sometimes the street might be connected, but it may not have a sidewalk, there may not be ramps, there may not be multimodal options. And so a lot of what we're working to do is retrofitting the existing system so that we can make those investments right now and plan longer term to be able to connect communities to each other, right? So we've been doing this through a proactive call for projects that we put out every year, and that allows us to leverage partnerships with MUDs and TERSs, management districts and cities to stretch our dollars and help them go further. Last year, in our first year in office, we leveraged about $107 million worth of infrastructure projects with $88 million invested from the precinct. We were able to secure an additional $82 million from a lot of these different partners who were, quite frankly, looking for someone to come in and help push these projects to the finish line. So that's one area that we're very invested in. We also created a $20 million sidewalk investment program in year 1 that and we were challenged to not just come up with a plan, but to actually design and construct the sidewalks in 1 calendar year. And that was very challenging, so it forced us to scope the project in a way that we could get the final design and construction really, really quickly. And that was, there's a lot of lessons learned in that aspect, but we've already been able to put out about $12 million of those sidewalks on the ground in areas that just quite frankly haven't had sidewalks or ramps or connections to the community centers and to the parks. And so that's a lot of what we've heard. But there's also, I think, a lot of challenges, and then there's shifting direction through the recent legislative session last summer, where there's kind of a shift in role in planning. There's a kind of combination of bills that amount to a shift on the planning responsibility coming to the county more than the city, particularly in managing growth and the transportation network beyond city limits. And it has to primarily do with a bill that was passed in the House which places a higher level of scrutiny on cities when they're going to request right-of-way dedication from developers beyond their city limits. I think it's House Bill 3669. And so what that bill does is it places the pressure on cities to have that project in their CIP funded. If not, they cannot require the developer to dedicate that right of way. And so there's a double standard. There's a test for counties, which counties can require that right of way be dedicated so long as we are able to have that project in a major thoroughfare plan for the county and that it be verified by TxDOT. And so that bill has allowed us to kind of, I think about our role as planners at the county and thinking more proactively about what we can do to help our cities. So I think that that's an area of growth and of innovation that is needed by not just Harris County, but I think Texas-wide. So that's also big.
Thank you so much. So Sherry, what does mobility look like for the Memorial Heights area?
Honestly, different parts of the city have different constituencies and exactly what mobility means, and the needs are in different areas are different. Memorial Heights is kind of a very interesting thing. If you go look at it, you will decide it looks kind of like an octopus, and you mentioned gerrymandering before. You'd think it was a gerrymandered district for commerce. But the reason it looks like it looks is because there were specific projects that the city was thinking about as they created the zone. The zone was created back in the 90s and has been expanded, and we had de-annexations all because of projects. So I'm sure the big thing that you're all aware of that we're doing is the Shepherd-Durham project. Shepherd-Durham project was actually thought of, and we started working with the city in 2015 on that project. So everybody knows this is 2024, so that's 9 years. We aren't starting probably digging on phase 2 until next year, and it's a 3-year project. So that's sort of just reminding everybody how long it takes to get these things done. Shepherd-Durham had interests of the city of what needed to be done. This is an area where we have done significant investment in this very major corridor in over 50 years. It has obsolete water and sewer. It has most certainly obsolete, like most of the city, stormwater infrastructure. And of course the roadways that had problems, and we did not have facilities for bikes and pedestrians. There was a lot of analysis done of the traffic that was here as far as cars are concerned, and what the needs were in the area. Once that was analyzed and a proposal was put forward, the TERS applied for a BUILD grant. A BUILD grant is a federal direct grant. It is extraordinarily competitive. They're only when they're given out, and this is BUILD grants used to be Tiger grants, then they were BUILD grants, and now they're RAISE grants. Every new federal administration changes the name. They're basically the same, but they change the name, so they're their own thing. In order to make it all work, we needed to divide the project into 2 phases. It was designed as one thing between 610 and I-10. The 2 phases, the first phase is 15th to 610. We were successful with our BUILD grant. What I learned in that was we need to be friends with everybody on every side of the aisle because we needed them all. We received support from our senators, our congresspeople, our state elected officials at the time, and of course our local officials. So the point in all this is that mobility looks like what everybody needs in their area, but it also has to be, you have to think about 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future as you design.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And then Justin reminded me during the reception that his group does transportation also, mobility also. So what do you have to say about that for your lives? What is mobility?
So sure, I'll one-up you. Bayou Greenways started in 2012, and we're not done.
No, actually, I'm gonna tell you it started well.
Well,
There's some plans that are like from, 19.
Yes, yes.
19.
Arthur Comey back in
Yeah, so-
1912. For
One
those
of
of
you
you,
guys should be bragging about how long it's been.
for those of you who aren't familiar, so Arthur Comey was was he a planner? Something like us. And he said, you have these beautiful waterways that are going through the city, and you turn your back on them. They really should be what you're looking at and designing around. There should be parks all around them. And we finally paid attention to him. It just took us like 100 years to do it, but that's okay. So our long-term mobility goal at Houston Parks Board is to create an interconnected network of parks, trails, and green space throughout the region. And some of that exists today, some of that is a twinkle in someone's eye, some of that is something that we hope someone else will do. But overall, you could build hundreds of miles of trails along bayous, trails through center point utility easements, trails that use sort of super sidewalks in some areas that don't have the ability to have a safe off-street or a safe sort of completely separate path. So we are constantly trying to figure out who we can partner with. Luis mentioned their call for projects and the amount of money that was leveraged. About 17 million of Precinct 4's funds for those that call for projects actually went to partnership projects with the Houston Parks Board. We're currently working on several different projects, either building underpasses under streets on bayou greenways that already exist to make them safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and to remove that conflict between cars and pedestrians or bikes. We're adding new trails in center point easements, like I said, where we just awarded a design contract to build a 5-mile trail largely through a center point easement in the A-Leaf neighborhood. So you do this building bit by bit over the course of many, many years. Again, we talked about planning horizons. Ours is very long. We know that it's gonna be, my kids, maybe my grandkids, before the vision of Houston Parks Board, and I'm not that old, so that's a long time. The vision of Houston Parks Board is realized, but that's okay. Visions can take a really long time to be realized. As long as we're making forward momentum, and as long as we're actively getting more partners, both sides of the aisle, people who have different perspectives to understand the benefit of what we're trying to create, and hopefully, continue to build that momentum towards that eventual vision.
Can I add something here?
Go for it.
So, he's talking about the long term, I'm talking about the long term. But, this is kind of one of those things that you have to have all these parties have to know what you're doing, you have to have a plan. Because only by having the plan can you start building these pieces that look like, oh, it's something that doesn't go anywhere today, but it's part of the plan that they come in and build and they come in and build. So part of the deal with Shepherd Durham is, first of all, it's creating these great connections and so on and so forth. But we're building a connection to the White Oak Bayou Trail from Shepherd Boulevard, which of course has been one of those things, there is a GO track there, but there's really no way to do it. And we're building a connection to the MKT from Shepherd Boulevard. So by knowing all of these things and by having these big pictures that everybody plays into, it means that all of our projects can go and make that little last connection, can make that little piece and make it all work together.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and the engineers and planners kind of argue about, is this idea of like, we have this great plan, but then we have to build something. So the engineers get involved. But so one of the questions that we had here as a follow-up related to mobility, kind of arising from some of the headlines that people may have noticed, is when, and I'm talking to the 3 center people here in the center that actually do mobility. So what rules or guidelines does your organization have about when a project that maybe even already is designed, when can it be canceled? What are the guidelines around that, if there are any guidelines around that? So I'll start with Louise. So imagine the scenario the commissioner just decides, I don't want to do that anymore. There's probably no limits or rules around that, right?
That's entirely within her purview, and you'd be really, really wrong if you wanted to go against her wishes, so.
Okay, so in that case, So on the executive side, within her precinct, she has a solar authority. What about in the Memorial Heights jurisdiction?
If I could also,
Oh,
I'd like to add a little more to that. When it's a project in the city, I mean, those are, or any other city, those are really subject to the partnership that we have with those partners. And so there has to be a working relationship at the staff level, but also at the political level, there has to be alignment there, and at least a respect that there could be differences in opinion.
So if I'm a mayor of a city and I partner with you and you cancel the project, I might be a little upset.
Right, and so it's not in our best interest to do that. It's also not in their best interest to be opposite way around.
Right.
So there's a two-way street in that way, the pun intended on that.
Good.
But I wanted to add here too that, going back to your question about planners and engineers, I wanted to put a plug in for division because that is actually worked as a way to translate planning language into engineering language. And it's kind of allowed the planners and the engineers to get on the same page before the value engineering happens and the scope gets killed or cut. So when we transfer our projects to the engineers, one, we're very grateful that our engineers have gone to the Envision Cert verification because a lot of what's in Envision speaks to the planning ideals. And that has allowed us to, when we transfer those projects, there is a way to communicate with engineers where there's some mutual respect and understanding. So there's this love for Envision for all y'all. If you want more successful projects, get your engineers to take Envision.
Okay, then Sherry, what about cancellations?
We are a creature of the city, which means that if the city decides to do a project or not do a project, that is completely within their control. And they can decide that at any point.
Okay, and then what about the Parks Board? Are you allowed to cancel a project?
Sure. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We don't have all of the rules and structure that government has. Having worked in government and the private sector, the nonprofit is that sweet spot. I want to give another example of how a project can get changed midstream though, which is through community input. So all of the work we do, we try really, really hard to engage the communities that we work in because we're not building these projects for me or for, our donors. We're really not. We're building them for the communities that we work in. Now, when we're building a trail project, and this came up within the last 6 months actually, we're building a trail project in a center point easement in a neighborhood that will remain unnamed. It's great. We're adding access, we're adding mobility, we're giving people, the ability to be close to a place where they can get active recreation. It seems like a good thing, but when you add trails and connect people, sometimes people that certain neighborhoods don't want to come closer to their neighborhood, that creates a little bit of a conflict. And so we're in construction on this project, and some neighbors say, look, I know y'all have been talking to us about this project for a couple of years. We don't want this trail right behind the fence of our backyard. We don't want crime, bad people are gonna come. And so we went out, we talked to the neighbors, we brought other community members from an earlier part of that trail to see what ended up happening when the trail was built. And from that conversation, we did make a slight change in the project. And so it's not canceling the project, but I think it goes to what Luis and Sherry both said. All the work that we do has a ton of stakeholders, and it's really about being mindful, respectful, and understanding of your stakeholders and of their perspectives. That's how you're gonna get good ultimate projects.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm looking at our time and looking at our topics, and we're gonna do housing, we're gonna skip parks. But people can ask in the audience if you have a park question. We're giving you time for audience questions. And then we'll go to solutions. So we're just gonna do housing and then solutions. Just letting the panel get you're adjusted to the new reality here. It's a planning change. We canceled the half the park project, right? Okay, so on the housing side, let's talk to Lynn. What are the outcomes that you're thinking about for housing? What do your stakeholders want? What does housing look like in the future?
Looking from the city of Houston side, over the past 2 to 3 years, there was a lot of work that went on with the community, all sectors of the community, both for-profit and residents and homeowners, to get input about changes that were made to chapter 42. And that included new housing options. So in order to create more affordability, more variety, think about the missing middle, research and studies that have been done. Out of all of that work came a new category of residential housing, which is MUR, or multi-unit residential. That speaks to the 3-plex all the way up to the 8-plex that have been really difficult and practically non-existent in the city of Houston over the past 20 years or more. And now it's possible to do that again in the city of Houston. It also created new courtyard options, so that it's kind of new, separating parking from the actual unit, smaller sizes for lot sizes, allowing smaller house sizes, as well as making ADUs or accessory dwelling units or mother-in-law flats, garage apartments, a little bit easier to build in the city. So I think no more, well, depending on the size, parking was relaxed, and the size of an ADU was expanded. Over I want to mention for the Houston Housing Authority, and again, I'm looking and thinking about the Kenny Homes Third Ward grant. This is a great opportunity to be able to put funding and financing into projects. The Kenny Homes was built in like 1938, so the infrastructure is very old. The technology is practically non-existent. There are a number of things that need to be upgraded in Kenny Homes, and so this is opportunity not only to redo that housing there in Kenny Homes, but also make improvements to people, to neighborhoods, and to housing within the greater Third Ward. So this is going to be kind of huge for Third Ward. And there were a number of plans, not only the plan for Kenny Homes, but the complete communities plans, and there was Roberta F. Torres. I named Roberta back in like 1901. I don't think it was really back that far, but there's a plan for Third Ward, and there's a ton of plans and work in Third Ward, and this is an opportunity for there to be funding to actually make these plans possible.
Now, just to clarify, so the city of Houston itself is not a developer, or can't act as a developer, so it isn't actually going out to say build houses, but there's all these like guidelines and policies and rules and permits and incentives and disincentives that allow housing to be built.
Yes, it does. And so we're looking for the architects and engineers in the audience and around the city of Houston to be creative and show the city of Houston how they can take advantage of these changes in chapter 42 to develop some really great housing in the future.
Okay, and then what about precinct 4, Luis, in terms of the vision for housing, and then obviously your role, you're not a developer either.
Yeah. On the housing front, I kind of have to go a little bit further back to when I was at the Computer Institute. I had the privilege of managing the Harris County Housing Study, the My Homes Here Housing Study, and what we learned through that initiative was that the affordable housing crisis that was mentioned earlier is really severe. We need over 200,000 units. Over the next decade, I think we're a few years into that, since that study, we need over 200,000 units to be able to close the gap in affordability here in Harris County. 2/3 of those units being for low to moderate income residents and below, being need deeper affordability in the region. And that's something that there's a government failure because there's a policy failure because not enough investment from the federal government, state government, or local governments to close that gap. And the market, there's also market failure because the market is not delivering housing for residents at that income level. You can also talk a lot about living wages and how that might help close the gap, but that's a very real problem we're dealing with. And so a lot of what we've been doing at the county is we've been maximizing the ARPA dollars that we've gotten to try to zero in on that gap, and especially that deep affordability issue. The Harris County Housing and Community Development Department has been working really hard to put those ARPA dollars to work across a number of different asset classes. What we do at the county, at the precinct, is we've been very thoughtful and methodical, and if we're going to do a park plan, we look at the context and we have to think about from an equitable perspective, are we going to lead into green gentrification? Are we going to cause displacement? And so we do, as planners, it's our ethical responsibility to not just look at things in a silo. We have to see how interrelated these elements are. And so we've been very fortunate to have a great consultant team, but we've worked on a couple of park plans where we even incorporated housing into it. And that's one way where we're trying to do our small part, but I think it's on all of us to also think very critically about what we can do on the housing front. I'm sure Lindsay, you can probably give us a whole lot more examples on housing too.
So you're up, let's start.
So, as you all know, at Houston Land Bank, our focus is affordable housing, but anytime someone says affordable housing, I always prompt, and if you don't take anything else from this, always ask them affordable for who, right? Affordability is needed at every single level, especially in the city of Houston. Our affordable housing focuses on those at 120% AMI and below, and with our program, partnered with the city of Houston, in which they build a home and we sell, it is at 80% AMI and below. And when we're partnered with the Community Land Trust, they focus, or try to focus at those at 60% AMI and below, right? So when we're looking at affordable housing, we also know it's Houston. So we are moving towards trying to make homes more resilient as well, because there's not a matter of if another storm will happen, it's practically when. And these communities are always at burden way more than other communities, and it's much harder for them to recover. So as the Houston Land Bank, we've looked at plans like livable places and other initiatives because our land came from Laura, right? The tax delinquent vacant land in these underserved communities. We have some land that has not been activated. There may not be roadways there yet. It may be a forest, or there may not be amenities nearby. So we're not just looking to build a home, we also have to build communities. Because putting someone in a home where they don't have access to job transportation, where their kids can't play safely, or their dog can't go outside in the backyard, it's not really serving them in any greater way. So the things such as that passed with the Livable Places Initiative have allowed us to utilize land and go smaller, right? Even in Houston, to go smaller, to put those units out there, because housing and family types look a lot different. Everybody doesn't want a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, like this is my home forever, or until the mortgage rate drops, we might move. There are some that are looking in the market that just want a 2-bedroom or a smaller 1-bedroom home. We've looked at examples across other cities where they built these cottage courts that have sold out before they could even get to 50% construction. So those are some of the things that we are looking at now. Resilience, diversifying our housing typology, and really focusing on bringing the missing middle back into the city of Houston, but also transit-oriented development as well. Some of those policy changes drastically reduce the amount of parking and things that we have to provide, meaning we can utilize more of this land. Like the stock of land is dwindling in terms of what we receive from Laura. So if we can build stronger public and private partnerships to activate some of their vacant land, or their land that is surplus or maybe has an outdated facility, that will help us increase this housing stock as well. Like, to Lisa's point, it is a drastic curve that we're going to have to reach, and it's really going to take a multi-pronged approach from several different entities, and we have to get really creative in the land that we have and how we're utilizing that to really maximize the stock before the housing.
And then just really quickly, what is the average median income for the AMI? Do you know approximately what it is here in this region?
What it is overall.
A dollar amount for the average.
So at 120% AMI, that individual for the city of Houston HUD guidelines is making $100,000.
$100,000.
That's one person, right? So HUD defines a family as just people. So if it is a 2-person household, it could be a person and a child,
Yeah.
it doesn't
I was just worried about the acronym.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did the acronym and the number.
I
So
apologize. Yes, I said
$100,000.
100, but at the acres in AMI, it's much lower. I think that one's at 75 or 74.
So basically, it's very hard to afford a house if you're only making $70,000 a year.
Yeah, as an individual, it's very hard to find a house.
Yeah. Okay, so we are in the home stretch, but we have to be super short. So you have like less than a minute to give us your big solution. There's lots of planning objectives and great exciting visions for the future. We've identified some of the challenges. What's the one thing that you would say is a takeaway recommend for trying to accomplish these objectives and overcome challenges? Sharon.
Pick me first. Educate people, educate elected officials, and get buy-in and make sure that everybody understands that right-of-way public property belongs to each and every one of us. It belongs to you, so therefore you have an opinion and you get to have it.
Awesome, thank you. Justin.
Try to see things through others' perspectives. We all come in with our own biases, our own perspectives. When you're doing a project, try to think about what other people might be thinking, how they might use it, what they might want or not want.
That's great, and then just to build on that, the idea of trying to, ask open-ended questions so they explain their viewpoint, like, well, why? Oh, why? Just keep asking why. It's a great mechanism. Okay, Glenn, what about you?
I'm gonna say the obvious and acknowledge Justin, I feel like you queued me up for this answer. Plans. Planning that includes community engagement, so it's not always just the people who are paying for it or in charge and staffing for it, and no matter what organizational level, but having community input. Because I thought about, Allen Parkway and the changes that were finally completed there, the road moved, buildings were built, there was infrastructure made to make it more resilient because there was a plan like a million years ago. Someone picked it up and finished. So planning with community engagement.
All right, thank you. How about Luis?
I'm gonna echo what Justin said. I think listening, and I mean like good active listening and understanding the perspective of others and trying to really get at the root of their concerns or what they're getting at. Because there might be different ways of approaching the problem. There's no magic wand. I think a lot of us are dealing with that at the moment, but I think the power of being better listeners, trying to distill hearing, and trying as best as we can to remove those implicit biases and approaching these issues as problem solvers, right? Is powerful. I think there's also a lot to be said here about finding where there is alignment with others who you may disagree with on certain topics, but focusing on the areas where you do have alignment, driving progress and trying to bring real tangible solutions to help to build rapport with certain folks who you may disagree with. So I think that's proof.
Yeah, identify what you agree on is huge. That's great. How about you, Lindsay?
So community is always North Star, I think, for everyone. I think a lot of the inequity that's happened in the built environment has been because of lack of community voices. But I really want to emphasize the importance of cross-sector collaboration, really starting to strengthen those partnerships. The problem of affordable housing or environmental contamination or mobility is too big for any one organization to tackle on its own. We really have to start creating these comprehensive plans that we can build off of where everybody takes on their role and letting people be stars in their sky. By that I mean leaning on their area of expertise, right? One organization or entity does not have to be the owner or master of all the things. Leaning on how we can really strengthen that cross-sector collaboration and utilize different entities and organizations for what they are really strong at and good at doing.
Thank you so much, that's great. Okay, so please join me in giving the panel a great round of applause. Now we have questions from the audience. Right.
I actually
Got to press it. It's not green, it should turn green.
Does it work? Hey, everybody. I actually wanted to see if I could give y'all just a little bit more time to talk about community engagement, because you all touched on it in your last response. Can y'all offer up examples of how you've engaged the community relative to one of your projects in a way that helps build public trust, or repairs public trust in communities where that has been fractured? So yeah, it's just.
Yeah, I would love to, I plan to put in the audience, because we actually have our Houston Justice meeting tomorrow. It's our quarterly environmental justice meeting where we invite community and stakeholders together for us to really come together and create, we're working on a capital absorption framework. It's a great tool where we can, but if you Google it, it's really cool. But we are trying to revitalize brownfields. So for whatever that means in each community, for some it's air, for some it's homes, for some it's park, for some it's mobility. But we've been able to utilize our brownfield activation committee in that quarterly Juice and Justice meeting and be fully transparent about our brownfields project. One of those projects is the former Velasco incinerator site. So during those meetings, we asked the community what were their priorities. They emphasized to us that that was one of them, and so we then created a strategy and plan on how to pursue ownership of that site and also how to secure funding for cleanup. We were luckily awarded that $5 million for the cleanup of Velasco, but that wouldn't have happened without community voices and buy-in and input. We are very transparent to the tune of we created a whole website, bankingvelasco.org, just to talk about the Velasco incinerator site because of the history it's had in the community and the lack of transparency some may feel has happened around that site. So I really strongly believe community engagement is really the driving force, being really transparent, being honest, level setting expectations about what you can and can't do. We told them from the beginning there's 30 feet of ask. Unless somebody has $60 million they want to give us, we're probably going to cap it and it has to be a green space. We're not putting houses there. Because we have to just be really honest. The structural integrity is not there. But I think that helped rebuild and repair the transparency, and we've never shied away from hard questions. So I would just say that those driving factors really do help repair those historical relationships.
I know you all want to talk about community engagement, but I kind of feel like we should take another question, so we're going to pivot to another question. What else?
The meeting's at headquarters, by the way.
What's that?
The meeting's at headquarters,
okay.
10:30 tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all of your remarks. I really appreciate it. My name is Dr. Adrienne Holloway, and I'm the Executive Director of the Houston Housing Collaborative. And we are a group of stakeholders in the housing space that went from community members all the way up to professionals in the housing space. We spent the lion's share of last year pulling together an affordable housing framework so that we can encourage the city of Houston to develop a housing plan. We presented that plan, that framework, to administration. And we haven't really received the traction that we'd like, which is the acknowledgement to see whether or not there is an interpreter to move this forward from an administrative perspective. But also see that, as you mentioned, it's not something that only one stakeholder can take on. But in your experience, I'm currently looking at those who are in government, because it does have implications for the county as well. Do you feel that this is one of those endeavors that may not push into a formalized plan? And in essence, do we see a housing plan, affordable housing plan in the future for the city?
Dr. Holloway, I feel like you were looking at me, but I want to remind everybody, I no longer work at the city of Houston, I work at the Houston Housing Authority, but I would say, keep contacting the administration. If you're not able to get directly to the mayor, his staff that are there in the mayor's office may be able to get an appointment with them. I think it's important to keep voicing your opinion. This is a new mayor, and, every mayor is different, but the citizens of Houston voted him in, and I think we should just keep, contacting his office.
I think the other thing everybody needs to remember, and I'm not a housing person, I like housing, I think housing is important, but that's not my area of expertise at all. But when you look at any of the groups that have been successful in Houston, it's not the first time, it's not the first bite at the apple. It's for lots and lots of things, they take more than one administration, they take a lot of work, they take a lot of things. I'm gonna suggest to you that you don't just look at the administration, you go build your coalition with 15 council members, you go build your your coalition with people at the county that the administration has a good relationship with, and you build your economic case for what you're doing. And the reality is that Houston needs to be a strong city in the future. Housing is one of those important pieces. And so that's would be my comment to you. I worked for an elected official, et cetera. Those things are built with lots of groups, people over lots of time.
I also think there's Houston doesn't want to be last, or they don't want other cities to be better than them. So benchmarking against other cities that actually have affordable housing plans would be an interesting study too, because I know there's lots of cities that have it. Let's talk about another.
Real quickly, I should say, the county is interested in doing a housing plan, because the housing study is just more of a diagnosis, that we've got to work on Holloway, but, there are conversations at the county about what is the next step, and especially with the ARPA, cliff that's coming, because we've had a number of ARPA resources that are coming to a close, and we're looking proactively at addressing housing. So I don't want to speak for the Housing and Community Development Department, but there have been active conversations about potentially doing a housing plan with the county.
Any other questions from the audience?
Michael, can I add something?
Oh, sure.
And thank you, Sherry, for that, because you'll need at least 3 council members on
Good point. Yeah, that's one of the funny stories about elected politics is you need to know how to count votes. Federal level, state level, local level, you gotta be able to count to 3 or 7 or 5 or 3 or whatever.
Hello, thank you guys. So Houston is a maybe an unconventional city, business zoning. So let's go to conventional suburbs. Housing and missing homes. We struggle with deed restrictions. Do you have some advice for your wonderful municipal partners in surrounding counties?
What kind of struggles are you having?
Deed restrictions.
What does that do? What's that outcome?
So, all right, we'll have conventional zoning, I can change the zoning, that's not a problem. The problem is deed restriction at the local level, so like an HOA might limit 1 unit per lot. Now what do I do?
There are methods to change the deed restrictions. So, the deed restrictions are contractual. And people bought their property and they were agreed to this contract. So there is a method to do that. It's very hard to change deed restrictions, absolutely, but it can be done. I mean, I've lived in neighborhoods that change their deed restrictions, so it can be done.
Oh, I know, you can buy all the lots.
You can buy all the lots. I've seen that done also in the medical center. So, I mean, it's possible, but it, you have to know what you want to do, and you have to expect that it's gonna take you a while.
Use the means of parcels.
I also would ask, is this what everybody wants, or is this what this one person wants in this area or on their parcel of land? I would imagine it would be much easier to remove the deed restriction if the entire street or block is really adamant about the removal of that, but in elevating all of those community voices and going with what the mass wants, may also help move the needle a little faster if they're all in favor.
So I'm gonna show a little love back to parks, because I feel bad about canceling that question.
So Jessica, tell me, you outlined a great vision of the Parks Board overall plan, like 100 years from now, here's what it looks like. But let's talk about the challenges to achieve that vision and other war stories. Do you have any war stories to share about like how hard it actually has been to achieve that vision?
All this gray hair. Remember how young I said I was?
You're not old enough to have war stories.
No, I mean, yeah, there are things that go wrong all the time. I mean, that's what life is. It's about how you deal with those things, how you get around them. That's, any aspect of life, I think that's incredibly important to have that personal resilience or that resilience within your organization to be able to deal with the speed bumps that come your way. I mean, I think the biggest obstacle to achieving our vision is money. We have projects on the books right now over $400 million, and that's a lot of money. We are operating with a city that is in fiscal crisis. A lot of things led to that, but the city doesn't have the money I think it would like to be able to invest in things like parks. I think a lot of people don't view parks, and this is a wrong way to view it, but don't view parks as an essential public good. They view it as a nice to have. Parks drive health, parks drive economic vitality, parks drive, social cohesion. Parks are really important, but I think often if you're saying build a new park, build a new fire station, those are some hard things. So I think, money's the biggest challenge, but I think working together, you can always find a way to move forward. You look for other partners, you figure out how to get it done, and it's just about that personal resilience.
And then I'm gonna pivot to like a success story, something really that you're super proud of. I know Louise it's a relatively new administration for Precinct 4, but it feels like you've got some pretty early wins. Anything that you want to celebrate out public right now? Put you on the spot a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't know this question was coming, but
I mean, I think the partnership program is pretty
yeah,
exciting.
the partnership program is important for us, but I would want to highlight that, just yesterday we found out that we won an ORLIP grant from the National Park Service and Department of Interior for Grand Galen Park, and it's $11 million.
$11 million.
We're really excited. There was collective joy at the office yesterday. It's been a long time coming for Gulfton and Sharpstown. This is a priority of ours in the precinct. Gulfton, and specifically Grand Galen Park, we're not looking at it as a traditional park plan. We're building community, and we've had over 1,000 participants in our workshops in there at the neighborhood. We've had over 21,000 touch points with community members throughout the lifetime of this master plan over the last year. We're very proud of Gulfton's story, and it resonated at the national level, federal level. We're motivated, and we're continuing to have conversations with Metro and the city about the park, having bus rapid transit as well as was the plan for. So to us, Gulfton Sharpstown is the crown and jewel. It's the #1 project at Precinct 4. But one thing that we're very proud of too, aside from the grant win, is that we scoped in an anti-displacement strategy into the park master plan. And we not only did that, but we joined TERS 20 and TERS 1, and we took a really creative approach because the county does not join tax increment financing law. That's a very fertile area where the county can, on top of the city's tax increment finance, we can put our property taxes there too. And what we did, we took a creative approach to the TERS, and we looked at, TERS typically do, right? We want some capital money. There's 30% of the money going to affordable housing. But the one thing that landscape architects always yell at me for, and engineers for, as a planner was, you all are always coming up with great ideas, but we can't maintain shit. So what we did is we looked at the statute very carefully, and we realized, we can actually create a revenue stream from the TERS increment for operations and maintenance. And so I'm really proud of that ability, because we're basically disarming problems in the future and rejections in the future about, we can't build this because we can't maintain it, so it's
So
great.
you got maintenance money and you got federal money. Big round of
And
applause
local money.
for all of that. I have to hand it over to my MC for wrap up, right?
Sure. Do we want to do one more question? I feel like there's one hand up there. Are you good? Feel it? Okay.
Why don't you
I can
get on
do
top?
one. You don't have to pass the mic. I just, so, you know, mostly for the students in the room, we're doing strategic plans, action plans, community plans, there are plenty of plans. What is the one critical thing you would name that takes plans into implementable projects?
So the question was, how do you convert a plan to an implementable project?
Yeah, or have a project come out.
Or an example where you've done that?
I think for plans, as you're creating them, you should also be thinking about your partnership stack and your capital stack and identify those early on, and really starting to understand how complex it's going to be to take a plan into implementation, identifying those key partners that are successful in the star in their sky, and being agile and ready. Like the Brownfields funding just happened to open up, we were agile and ready and had a plan kind of already baking. So identifying those partners early on or identifying your strategies early on, I think help you to move into that funding phase, because the real driver is money.
Real quick, I should mention this earlier. You're a project manager or a planner. If you want to work with me, Houston Parks Board is hiring 2 project managers and a senior planner. I do super cool stuff. Go to our website and follow.
All right, and so that, again, I'll let, kind of get the wrap up here, and everyone, really appreciate everyone's attention and the questions.
Great. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, all y'all on the panel here, on the round table. You guys did awesome. And it's really great to see the planning work that has been going. The momentum is there with all the entities that y'all work for. And it really gives the rest of us hope that we can keep moving and doing great things. So thanks again for being here. Before I give you another round of applause, little plug for some things that we have coming up. Transit in the city with Link Houston. Peter's here, he can talk to you about that. They have 2 events next week on the 2nd and the 3rd. Yeah, talk to Peter, I was gonna say, you can look online too. YPT Houston Light Rail Pub Crawl is October 4th, that's also next week. Next week is also, Ryan, what's next week? A week without driving. Can you guys try it? We challenge you to try that. A week without driving. October 3rd through 5th is Texas Society of Architects Convention in Houston. The planning conference for APA is in Allen, Texas. And then we will have a really fun holiday party for all of you guys to come join us in December. TBD on date and location, but it's always a good time just to hang out with your fellow planning type people. And then we are working right now on getting a meet and greet with the Houston Planning Director. We are talking about early 2025, so stay tuned for that. And then a little bonus, unless you didn't know this, if you're an AICP person, that's our certification for APA, this is 1.5 CM credits. So log your credits. Thank you to Mariana who keeps track of this stuff for our chapter. So with that, Michael, you did a great job. We appreciate